Gentlemen and ladies of the internet, we're here to present to you today the GT86 BRZ and FR-S bolt-on angle kit. Now, for those of you that haven't been paying attention, this is going to be the second part of our quasi but not super kinda maybe official Super Lock series for the new 86 platform. Our last vid filled you to the brim with knowledge of our inner tie rods, which is where you want to start to get you that little bit of extra rack movement going forward. Next up in this series, and what is currently twirling around in front of you, is our brand spanking new 86 lock kit. Speaking of knowledge, go ahead and prep your cerebrums and get ready for some facts. This kit provides 30% faster steering, as well as being able to support up to 60 degrees of steering lock with our other supporting mods, of course. And these also include high clearance, high misalignment tie rod ends, which offer the clearance and assistance you need to get every bit of lock you deserve out of life. Now, on top of that, we've squeezed in adjustable Ackerman as well as adjustable Bumpsteer. All of this in a completely reversible if you decide to sell the car package. We also include all the accessories needed to install this thing as well, as one would hope and or expect. These being serrated locking nuts, main studs, the ball joint spacers, and anything else that you need to install. Now that we've fashionably yet gently spun these facts and images into your brain forever, let's move on to how and why you would adjust the Ackerman and Bumpsteer. As shown here, with the adjusters facing in the outwards position shown on the screen, that means the tie rod would also be positioned to the outside, meaning less Ackerman. To adjust this, rip that bolt out, then go ahead and flip the two inserts, effectively pushing the tie rod inwards, giving you more Ackerman, which means more lead wheel and less trailing wheel. Choose your poison according to your driving style and move along, please. Continuing the knowledge bomb fest, we move on to using a heaping spoonful of your favorite and strongest locking juice on these bolts, as this is más importante, my amigos. Spoon it on as shown here prior to install and toss it back in the hole. Don't worry, your sweet little head will be torquing these to specs shortly. Okay, compadre, you're now old enough. It's time to have that man-to-man chat about Bumpsteer and how that can be adjusted by putting two shims at the bottom, which moves it up, and or two shims at the top, which moves it down. These two are really driver dependent / ride height and setup dependent, which we'll go over slightly in just a little bit. If you're a commoner and you just want to drive like us, set it in the middle as shown here. What you're going for is you want the tie rod and the lower control arm to be parallel. There are advantages and disadvantages to changing this, so make sure to go down that rabbit hole at your own convenience on your own time. Then make up your own conspiracy theories about it and make sure to post all about it on the internet like you're the world's biggest expert. Here, we're keeping it casual and we're going with the neutral route, as we don't want to do anything crazy with this setup. Speaking of setups, enough talk, let's get this thing installed, shall we? Head on over to your whip, which at this point is in desperate need to dangle some angle. Remove the split pin from the tie rod end and zap that nut on off. Grab a hold of the hammer you loving refer to as Thor's and remind that knuckle who's boss. Once popped loose, wind the outer off from the inner tie rod. Then you can head inside, which is apparently so deep into the chassis that no light can reach based off of this video, and remove the split pin from the ball joint. Toss a wrench on that nut and loosen it on up and remove it from said equation. Now, in the interest of making this here unit strong enough for skids, we had to put it on a strict diet of steroids and protein.
Yes, I've done steroids, and yes, I'm on steroids.
Unfortunately, this means you'll have to trim your brake dust shield a little bit to get it to clear. Start by temporarily mounting the bracket to the knuckle. Now, there are two ways you can do this, one being a quick mark and trim, the other being to remove the dust shield completely, as we all know dust shields are for nerds anyway. If you chose option 1, grab a paint pen and mark on top and bottom where you see the angle kit making contact. Stick your paint marker into the gut shown here, and that's going to mark a pointless little nubbin of metal that Toyota so graciously graced us with, as it will need to be removed regardless of what method you choose. Now that you've chosen a method, it's best to remove the dust shield anyway, so use your socket-like fingers like our main man Zach has done here to remove the caliper, then the rotor. Now zap off the 3 bolts holding on that dust shield. Since that's gone, you now have access to the nub, and just like removing a skin tag, grab a grinder and smooth that thing on out. Hit that raw metal with a bit of paint to keep the rust devils away, and if you chose option 2, you're basically done. Frisbee that nerd circle into the bin and reassemble your rotor and caliper. Once binned, toss the rotor on, get your ratchet hand Zach back in, and zip the 2 bolts holding that caliper back in, torquing those to the specs shown right here on the screen. And my dude, you're back in business. Well, almost. Next, toss up the washer over the ball joint thread, as if you don't, the angle kit won't sit correctly and you will have a bad day. Now, shimmy said angle kit on in. Drop the LCA down so you can slide the angle kit over the ball joint, then press it back up and toss the nut up, winding that down just to hold it on in place. Now head over to the tie rod end side, grab the stud and tap it on home. Then toss that nut up to hold it as well. Turn the knuck a bit to mate up the outer and the inner tie rods, and then thread those home as well. Getting your wheels as straight as humanly possible, and whilst doing this, you want to ensure that you have a minimum of 15 millimeters of thread overlap. Any less, and you will continue to have a bad day from earlier if you forgot that washer. Any more than that, and you're doing real well, my guy. Grab your 17th favorite shifter, support the outer tie rod end like your friends could never do for you, and tighten that lock nut on down. Of course, it's torque to spec season here at GKTECH, so let's get it on. Starting with the main bolt for the angle kit, snag that torque wrench and hit it with the specs shown right here. Then move on to the top of the old tie rod mount and crack these specs off on that B. Next, move to the knuckle ball joint and belt out this classic torque spec from 1976, and you can call it a day. Time to grab that phone, take 6 selfies, 4 Instagram stories, a reel, and 5 TikToks so the people know you're the real deal and have honest-to-God angles for your 8.6 chassis. It's now time to call the alignment shop and book that ish in ASAP, as you will 100% need to get that dialed in to have a proper fun time doing some skids. Time to crack open a cold root brewski or whatever drink your mom brought you into the garage and think about how proud you'd make Takumi if he actually existed. These are the 3 dudes responsible for more nuts and bolts being torqued to spec than a manufacturer's assembly line. And guess what? They all love drifting as much as you do. If you do need help, have a pro do this, or reach out to us with any questions you may or may not have. This has been Officer Dan, Johnny Caps, and Guy Gene Zach with another GK Tech How To. Peace.